Hello everyone. Welcome back to Mythology Revealed. Today we're going to dive deep into a Greek myth filled with fate, prophecy, and tragedy. The story of Oedipus. This hero, whose life was twisted by fate, was destined from the start to face the most rigid challenges and contradictions. Could he escape the course set for him by destiny? And what kind of upheaval would his journey cause? Let's uncover this moving story together and deeply reflect on the subtle relationship between fate and free will. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss more fascinating content from us. Are you ready for the thrilling journey of Oedipus? Let's begin. The story of Oedipus is one filled with fate, prophecy, murder, and tragedy, carrying an ancient power that is both shocking and thought-provoking about humanity's destiny and free will. The beginning of this story is anything but ordinary. The protagonist, Laius, the King of Thebes, starts his journey by attempting to escape a prophecy, only to fall into an inescapable tragic trap. This tale is not only a part of ancient Greek mythology, but also a profound allegory about human fate. Laius's fate begins with a prophecy, one that not only foretells his own tragedy, but also sets his son Oedipus on an inescapable path. When Laius learns that he will be killed by his own son, and that his son will marry his own wife, Jocasta, this cruel prophecy fills him with dread. In an attempt to avoid this fate, he decides to take extreme measures. Laius orders his servant to abandon the newborn child on a mountain to die, ensuring both his own safety and the prevention of the prophecy. To ensure the child's death, Laius even commands the servant to pierce the baby's ankles and bind his feet together. However, the power of fate is far beyond human control. The servant, though obeying the king's orders, cannot bear to carry out such a cruel act. Instead, he chooses to give the baby to a shepherd, who then takes the child to the distant city of Corinth. There, the shepherd delivers the helpless infant to King Polybus of Corinth, and the child is raised as the Prince of Corinth. When this child was abandoned by his parents, King Laius of Thebes and Queen Jocasta, it was due to a prophecy that foretold the need to discard him on the mountain to avoid a future tragedy. However, the power of fate seemed irresistible, and the innocent child ultimately ended up being taken to distant Corinth, where he was adopted by King Polybus and Queen Merope. Polybus and Merope treated him as their own son, raising him with care and granting him the identity of a prince, providing him with what appeared to be a fulfilling life. However, fate's manipulation of Oedipus was far from over. Living a carefree life in Corinth, he was unaware that he was not Polybus' biological son until one day at a banquet, he overheard a nobleman mocking him. This nobleman publicly revealed the secret, leaving young Oedipus stunned, as if hit by a bombshell. Confusion clouded his mind, and he began to doubt his origins, struggling to accept that he was not the Prince of Corinth. This truth unsettled him, prompting him to seek answers, and with lingering questions, he traveled to Delphi to consult the oracle. When Oedipus heard the prophecy from the Delphi oracle, his world collapsed in an instant. The oracle coldly informed him that his fate was already sealed. He would kill his father and marry his mother. This news struck him like a thunderbolt, leaving him in disbelief and confusion. He loved his adoptive parents, Polybus and Merope, and couldn't bear to think of causing them suffering or becoming a sinner. To avoid this dreadful fate, Oedipus resolutely decided to leave Corinth, choosing to escape this destiny and everything associated with it. He chose to embark on an unknown path, leaving the comfort of his familiar home behind, stepping onto a new road in an attempt to change his fate. However, it seemed that fate was a dead end for him, and no matter how hard he struggled, he could not break free from the predetermined conclusion. Oedipus's attempts to escape merely led him closer to the abyss. During his flight, an unexpected conflict arose. As he traveled along the road, he encountered a carriage where two servants rudely shoved him aside, leading to an altercation. Angered, Oedipus struck one of them with his staff, and in the ensuing chaos, he killed the old man. This sudden confrontation left him feeling despondent, even regretting his impulsive act of murder. However, as he left the scene, he did not realize that the old man he had killed was none other than his biological father, King Laius of Thebes. Fate seemed unwilling to relent, as every choice he made and every path he took in an attempt to escape ultimately led him toward the abyss of the prophecy. The moment Oedipus struck down Laius, regardless of whether he was aware of the truth, the prophecy had already begun to unfold. The whirlpool of fate quietly swallowed him, yet he remained oblivious. With the death of Laius, the kingdom of Thebes fell into great chaos and fear. The death of Laius not only left the throne vacant, but also marked a turning point in the future of the entire nation. Just as the people of Thebes were lost and desperately needed a leader, the fearsome creature known as the Sphinx descended upon them. This monster perched atop a high cliff, posing an extremely puzzling riddle to passers-by each day. Those who could not answer the riddle would be mercilessly torn to pieces and devoured by the Sphinx. Such fear and suffering relentlessly tormented the people of Thebes, shrouding the entire city in shadows of death, leaving neither the wealthy nor the poor unscathed. During this tumultuous time, the political power of Thebes was eventually taken over by Laius's brother, Creon. Although he was not the legitimate heir to the throne, the circumstances compelled him to step forward to lead the nation out of its crisis. Creon understood that the survival of the kingdom depended on finding someone who could solve the riddle, so he issued a proclamation announcing that whoever could solve the Sphinx's riddle would not only receive a great reward, but also the throne of Thebes and the heart of his widow, Jocasta. This enticing offer immediately attracted countless challengers. However, the riddle was no small matter. The Sphinx posed a profound and difficult riddle. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening? Many attempted to answer, but one by one, they failed and became victims of the monster. The people of Thebes lived in helplessness and despair, and as time passed, the situation grew increasingly dire. At that moment, a stranger appeared outside the city of Thebes, a young man named Oedipus. This young man was unaware of the challenge he was about to face, but his determination and courage made him fearless. Upon hearing about the proclamation, he unhesitatingly journeyed to confront the riddle of the Sphinx. His arrival brought a glimmer of hope to Thebes, for he possessed not only extraordinary intelligence, but also the freedom from conventional authority. Oedipus's emergence heralded a dawn of change for the cursed city of Thebes. When Oedipus arrived at the city gates, he fearlessly and courageously approached the legendary monster. The Sphinx, as usual, coldly posed the riddle. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening? This was a seemingly unsolvable and profound question, but Oedipus remained undeterred. After a moment of contemplation, he confidently answered, "It is man." He explained that a human crawls on all 4s as an infant, walks on 2 legs as an adult, and may use a cane in old age, thus walking on 3 legs. Oedipus's answer struck at the heart of the riddle, breaking its curse. Upon hearing the correct answer, the Sphinx, angry and desperate, leaped into the abyss and ended its own life. Oedipus then became the hero of Thebes, admired by all as their savior. With the monster's disappearance, the fear that gripped Thebes also dissipated. Creon, honoring his earlier promise, gave the throne and his sister Jocasta to this liberator. Unbeknownst to Oedipus, he had inadvertently completed one of the most terrifying aspects of his fate. He married Jocasta, the beautiful queen, and he himself, in ignorance, became the king of Thebes. To him, all of this seemed like a gift of destiny. However, as time passed, the tragic truths hidden beneath it all began to surface. Unbeknownst to Oedipus, he had inadvertently completed one of the most terrifying aspects of his fate. He married Jocasta, the beautiful queen, and he himself, in ignorance, became the king of Thebes. To him, all of this seemed like a gift of destiny. However, as time passed, the tragic truths hidden beneath it all began to surface. Oedipus once enjoyed what appeared to be a perfect life. He became the king of Thebes and started a family with his wife Jocasta. Together, they welcomed 4 children, 2 brave sons, Eudicles and Poloniuses, and 2 beautiful daughters, Antigone and Ismene. For Oedipus, this was a happy family, and their lives seemed filled with endless light and hope. At that moment, he likely believed that all suffering and tragedy were far behind him. However, the happy life did not last long, as fate once again played its cruel hand with the hero who had once solved the riddle. A terrible plague suddenly broke out in Thebes, mercilessly ravaging the people of the city. Sickness and death spread relentlessly, plunging the entire city into endless panic and despair. The lives of the people were in turmoil. Countless families lost loved ones, the farmlands lay abandoned, the economy collapsed, and every street in the city was filled with sorrow and wailing. At that time, Oedipus was seen as a king particularly favored by the gods, his intelligence and courage having once saved Thebes. Now, the people pinned all their hopes on him once again. He was believed to be the only one who could rid the city of this plague, and everyone expected him to find a solution to end the suffering. In order to find the source of the plague, Oedipus decided to consult the oracle once more, hoping for guidance. He entered the sacred oracle at Delphi, his heart full of anxiety and hope. When the oracle spoke again, what Oedipus heard was a shocking answer. The oracle told him that the cause of the plague was the unpunished blood of Laius, meaning the murderer of King Laius was still at large. It turned out that all of this disaster originated from him. Oedipus had unknowingly killed his father, King Laius of Thebes. This act not only robbed him of his father, but also made him the one responsible for bringing the plague upon the city. What was even more painful was that he had married Laius's widow, his own mother, Jocasta, and had children with her. Such a truth was almost impossible for him to accept, yet there was no escaping the reality. At that moment, the arrival of the prophet Tiresias was like a lightning bolt illuminating the darkness, leading Oedipus to a deeper understanding of the fate he could not escape. Tiresias was a blind prophet known for his profound insight and foresight. In a tone of utmost seriousness, he told Oedipus the harsh truth. He was the murderer of his father, Laius, and his marriage to his mother, Jocasta, was an involuntary act of the most dreadful incest. This revelation pierced through Oedipus's heart like a sharp dagger. For Oedipus, this moment was undoubtedly the most painful blow of his life. When he realized he could not escape the grasp of fate, all past efforts and struggles suddenly felt insignificant and powerless. His heart felt as though it were being torn apart by an invisible force, with sorrow and fear intertwining, leaving him unable to release the pain. Jocasta's fate also rushed towards its end. She could not bear the taboo truth about herself and Oedipus, nor could she confront the unbearable shame and suffering it brought. Under the immense psychological and emotional pressure, Jocasta ultimately chose to end everything. Her suicide was not merely an escape from past mistakes, but also a desperate rebellion against the cruel arrangements of fate. In Oedipus's tragic story, despite fate ruthlessly pushing him toward the abyss, it also granted him 2 loyal daughters, Antigone and Ismene. These 2 girls became his only source of support amid endless suffering, and, at moments when he faced an unchangeable fate, they offered him some solace. Antigone, his strong and selfless daughter, chose to remain by her father's side, unwavering in her loyalty. In times when Oedipus was tormented by fate and physically and mentally exhausted, Antigone became his most devoted supporter, giving all her love and devotion to her father's downfall. Oedipus ultimately decided to leave Thebes, once the land of his family's glory, and become a wanderer, burdened with heavy remorse and pain. He carried with him the sins and mistakes of the past as he left behind all familiar places, heading into the endless darkness. However, no matter where he went, no matter how far he traveled, Antigone remained by his side, becoming his final refuge. She did not choose to escape or forget, but instead chose to bear this heavy fate alongside her father. When Oedipus reached the end of his life, he arrived at the grove of the Furies of Cronus, the final destination of his fate and his ultimate resting place. In this grove, Oedipus finally found the peace that belonged to him. Though it came with such sorrow and slowness, at least in this final moment, Oedipus was no longer alone. Antigone, his loyal daughter, remained steadfast, accompanying her father through the last leg of his journey. She knew that this was not just about accompanying her father, but also about accepting and respecting the inevitable outcome of fate. The story of Oedipus is one of the most iconic tragedies in Greek mythology, deeply exploring the contradiction between fate and free will. His fate had been foretold, and no matter how hard he tried to escape, he could never evade the irreversible conclusions set by the gods. From the moment of his birth, the threads of fate bound him tightly, pushing him inexorably into the abyss of tragedy. When Oedipus learned that he was destined to kill his father and marry his mother, he was filled with fear. He fled Corinth, hoping to escape this doom, but fate always arrived in ways he never expected. This struggle against fate prompts one to question, can humans truly control their own destiny, or are we merely puppets of fate, experiencing an uncontrollable tragedy? The ending of the story is incredibly cruel, yet also makes us realize that, no matter how much we struggle, fate will ultimately arrive in its own way, unavoidable. Oedipus' tragedy is not only a result of his personal choices, but also because he was forced to face an uncontrollable force. This reminds us that on our journey through life, there are some things we cannot change or control, and that is a vulnerable side of humanity. Thank you for joining us on this tragic journey with Oedipus. This hero, tormented by fate, teaches us how important it is to face the unknown future in life. No matter what lessons the story imparts, the final outcome leaves us pondering, is our destiny truly changeable? If you enjoyed this story, please remember to share this video so that more friends can experience the tragedy of Oedipus. Also, feel free to leave a comment below to share your thoughts on this story, or let us know what topic you'd like to learn about next. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you can stay updated with our latest content. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.